Hell yeah. Oh,
Oh,
oh my word.
hell yeah.
Hell yeah. That's a good
Those are the
start. All right,
first words.
open that beer, Chris.
I did, but I think this is a new thing we have to do every week. It's got to be a hell yeah
It's
for me.
got to start with a hell yeah. You
Right.
know what? That's
Finish the night
right.
off. Hell yeah.
Start with a hell yeah. Chris, I think that is fantastic. A hell yeah from all of the people who are, you know, out there
That's right.
improving their lives and
That's right.
resisting lame situations.
That's right, people. Hell yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Here we are.
Oh, oh, I'm trying to just get in. You know, I like to watch. I always am on Facebook as well as being in here, so I can interact with the people.
There's
But
mom.
oh, hey, mom. Hey, mom and dad. You know, they've really gotten into football, Chris, really, and they're making some sacrifices,
Oh,
to be
what
at
do they
these,
have? Do they have like a two-screen setup?
but they should.
They got the little laptop with us, and then they got the big 80-inch
No,
screen.
no, 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 no. We gotta be on the 80-inch, Chris. The
We're
football
gonna
can
be on
be
the
on the mini screen. No, but I'm happy for them. They've been having fun. I mean, I love learning about things and I love hearing about what people are passionate about. But if I'm watching football, I glaze over within about 10 seconds. I focus on everything but the actual game. I'm not a sports watcher, Chris.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
terrible at it.
yeah, yeah. I don't have cable or anything, so I don't even get any of those channels. But it's fun to watch now and then.
Yeah, it is fun. It is fun.
Games,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
big
It is.
games.
It's a good time. Oh, mom and dad are very excited. They really enjoyed Jane and David in our New Year's open mic night. So they're
Mhm.
pumped to get to hear their full feature. And mom and dad, they're passionate about maintaining that, near perfect attendance record, so football sometimes. I don't know about Super Bowl next week. I don't know about that.
All
But
right. Is that
but
next week?
next week is a big show. It's a big show, people. Try
Is
to
the
tempt
Super
you away
Bowl?
from the Super Bowl.
Is that the Super Bowl's next week,
I
or is it?
think. Is it? Wait. It's like the first Sunday in February. Hold
I
on,
don't know.
let's
Mom,
Google
help
it.
us out. When is the Super Bowl? Um,
Hold on, I'm Googling it right now. This
or
is
as,
so funny.
as we like to call it, Super Bowl Schmooper Bowl.
Super Bowl. No, it's the 12th. Oh my God, excuse me. I was so wrong. Well, it's still gonna be any show on here is a great show. We always think we're better than the Super Bowl. We compete with them because we just know, we feel very confident.
That's right.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, how was your weekend?
My weekend was fine. It was absolutely fine. Played some poker, lost
Oh,
a little money, but not too terribly much money. Only because my friends were being um, very tolerant of me.
oh.
I'm comically inept at poker, and there's so many different kind of poker games, and they just say, "Okay, we're going to play Texas Hold'em low end, blah 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 blah," and I say, "What?" And then they have to explain it to me, and I get lost, and I end up making a fool of myself. But
Well, Chris, all I can say is that whenever, there are card games involved, I am similarly in that kind of boat. However, I have experienced beginner's luck. When I first learned how to play poker, I demolished the people that I played with. But I think that was the beginner's luck thing because every time I've done a card like game, especially if it was like, a little casino moment, I have been horrible and people have told me to stop.
yeah,
Yeah, no, it's bad. I need to only play the like the blackjack where you sit by yourself and play with the machine. I mean, I also don't have money to do such a thing, but when I had a free bet, I played literally one round, and people were like, "Get out of here." It
No,
was funny. It was funny.
always good to just not do it.
No, no,
But,
no, no. You lose too much. You lose too much money. It's
if
not.
you're
It's
just
not
with
a good.
friends hanging out,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
the heck?
It's a good time. Anyways, we need to officially welcome you to FUMFA 118. We are so excited to welcome back Jane VanVooren Rogers and David Radavich. They were with us for our New Year's open mic night, and we're so excited to have them back for a full feature. But Chris, can you also tell our audience what is coming up soon?
Absolutely. Next week we have a extra special show because our good friends are going to be on here tonight. Our old pals, Mr. Midnight, Philip J. Curtis, and John Chance Acevedo, who are our regular attendees, regular tuner-inners, and if you haven't seen them in action,
Oh
you
my
should
God.
go
Listen,
because
and I
they're
bet
very
you they've got a few little special things up their sleeve that'll happen
yes,
live and only once. So,
they play off each other and they razz each other, and it's always a fun time. And they both have brand new books out, collections of poetry. So we're going to talk those up, and there might even be some clothing, the
additional
special
merch
clothing that we're
that
gonna
we will be
that's
modeling.
be modeling. And then that's on the 5th. That's a week from tonight. And then the week after that, on the 12th, we have our another old dear friend, Vale Larkin, is going to be back with us, who also was on the open mic a few weeks ago, and a new person who hasn't been on before, Diosa X, and that's going to be amazing. And then the following week we have Poet Laureate Night.
Poet Laureate Night.
A bunch of poet laureates from Connecticut. B. Fulton Jenis, our friend Barb, Sandy
Barb.
Carlson, right?
Sandy.
Mr. Bill Hayden, and Jack Sheedy. These are all fairly local poet laureates
In Connecticut.
of their towns in Connecticut. And then the week after that, 24th, we have our in-person open mic.
It's going to be incredible, people. You can sign up now. Our most recent in-person open mic last Friday night was amazing. First of all of our in-person open mics are incredible, so much fun, but it was packed. The sign-up list was full. Our features were lit, and you don't want to miss it. If you can make it down to Eco Evolution Friday, February 24th. You don't want to miss this. We're going to have our friends SK and Amy Martin, who have been guests on the show as features, as well as FUMFA's very own Dr. T. Han. Tommy Hahn. We're so excited to have him there, as well as a wonderful musical guest, Leche Guy, who you may have seen if you've been down at Eco Evolution. He also works there. It's going to be so much fun. You can't miss this one, people.
Oh,
sign up,
it's going to be
down.
great. It's going to be great, and it's becoming a thing now. It's becoming a thing. It's like a local.
Really is.
People are showing up, so we're getting big crowds, and people are excited. And we have comedians and musicians and poets and prose and parlor trick magicians, a little bit of everything.
A little bit of everything, indeed. And if you are feeling feeling like you missed out on the ones you didn't see, go check out our social media, check out some of our video clips and photos. Just such a great time. And make sure you get to this next one. And Mary Catherine Harper, we just got to give you a shout out. Great to see you this evening, and thank you for this lovely comment. You are better than the Super Bowl. Oh, Mary Catherine. Thank you so much. That is so kind.
We are the Super Bowl of literature.
Ooh, yes. I love that, Chris. I think, yeah, exactly. Well, we need to welcome up our first guest of the evening, Jane VanVooren Rogers. Welcome, Jane.
There she is.
Hi, Katie and Chris. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
We're so excited to have you back for a full feature. How has your weekend been?
Oh, it's been great. I just went swimming earlier today with my kids, and that was really nice. It was exhausting, but nice. Afterward, I was kind of questioning, like, maybe I shouldn't have done this before a poetry meeting. Like, my neck's all sore and things like that. But no, we had a great time, and it was fun. Good exercise.
Yes.
Great. Well, and what a perfect way to end the day now.
Yeah, this will be great.
So
will be
lovely.
great.
All right. Well, I'm going to just introduce you with your bio, Jane. FUMFA student Jane VanVooren Rogers has written professionally for more than 20 years, crafting hundreds of pieces, articles, essays, newsletters, profiles, speeches, and more, writing about everything from agricultural equipment to volunteer efforts. She has edited 15 published books, including the multiple award-winning When the Words Suddenly Stopped, Finding My Voice Again After a Massive Stroke by Vivian L. King, which was featured on Good Morning America. Jane also has a poetry chapbook, How to Avoid Being and Other Paths to Triumph, published by 918 Studio Press. She has an interview show currently on hiatus on Facebook and YouTube called Author Talks, where writers are an open book. Jane is a lifelong resident of the Quad Cities area and lives with her husband and lovely blended family in semi-rural Illinois. Take it away, Jane.
Thank you so much, Katie. I really appreciate it. Well, I'm going to start first with just a few poems from, here if I can show this correctly, my poetry chapbook, How to Avoid Being and Other Paths to Triumph. So I'm just going to start with a few from there. So the first one is called Model, and I wrote this back when I was an undergrad student. And it was based on a photograph that I saw in the in the art gallery, and I just thought it was really cool and inspirational. And I thought that it would be something nice to share with women who often struggle so much with body image and aging and all of those issues. So this is called Model. A cream-toned photograph embraces a woman of auburn grace, nearly almost ageless, but rather timeless. Her softened, wrinkled eyes glimpse peace over our heads, but her stare staying focused, daring to look back at girls squeezed into tight jeans and taking aerobics between classes, posing a challenge. Why don't you try? I have come this far. Test this edge. You can peel it back and push farther. We wonder where she has found this serenity, and we envy, not confined to the glow of a grandmother, but expands to the light of a woman loving herself, taking comfort, feeding from this calm rather than on her body. Folded arms across open chest, silver hair and shoulders freckled and bare, standing naked but protective, too young for sepia tones. This next one is called Silver Light, and it's a reflection on a poet I admire a lot and who was a huge influence on me when I first started reading and writing poetry, and that's Diane Wachowski. So Silver Light, reflection on Diane Wachowski. Dear Lady of Silver Light, moon enchanter, hunter of stars, archer of men, prolific wordsmith, your words are like prisms that revolve and color teacup and sheet in rainbow shades. You map personal myth like a battlefield. I see many casualties. You are not one. You aim arrows in directions other than your own, rotating your years and places as for sightseers. You elevate dreams of ice and young men in white shirts to form mystery around yourself. A smooth blanket for a naked woman wearing diamonds who rides through your Michigan Midwest on a zebra. I wonder if you feel landlocked, no longer by the sea, missing the golden light of orange groves. But you have your steel man, brown and broad-shouldered, like actors with deep green eyes, intense and comfort at once. He shares your tea, knows the code of night, understands yes, accepts no, perhaps the only non-Jason of the bunch. And you call yourself Medea for pushing your children away, formerly trapped in a phone booth, unable to be rescued. More light, you say, more light, as the poet and the astronomer meet. This next poem is the title poem from the collection, and I will just give a quick trigger warning for sexual assault. How to avoid being. Walk quickly and with purpose, but not as though you are afraid, or even have thoughts tickling in your mind that you could be hurt in any way. Don't wear ponytails or overalls. These can be pulled or snipped too easily. Or penny loafers, because those would inhibit a mad dash to safety. Appear confident at all times as you scan the stairwell and the parking lot and behind the bushes and the back seat of your car. Don't wear short skirts, long hair, or tall heels. Besides being alluring and feminine, these would also make running difficult. Look around. Take a good look at the people around you. Even if it's a friend, a neighbor, a coworker, you never know who you can trust. Maybe eye contact will scare them off. If not, it will help you identify them later. Don't carry a bunch of packages. You'll appear too loaded down with stuff and struggling, also a sign of easy prey. Lift weights, do kickboxing, take a self-defense course, make yourself as strong as possible. Of course, this still won't compare to the size and strength of your attacker or attackers. If you're caught, yell no or fire as loudly as you can. Not that anyone will hear or help. Maybe they'll close the window or watch. Don't fight or fight. It's your call. Either way, you could end up dead, or at best, walking wounded alive. But it wouldn't be your fault. It's just a state of being. And I'm going to move on now to poetry that I've been working on for a long time, for a kind of a memoir in progress that may end up being something else, but the tentative title is Love Affair with a Dead Man. So the first poem is At UTHS. Here's what I remember. The photo of you in the yearbook sophomore year. The boy with the ruffled hair, wearing a tie-dyed t-shirt, undeniable sadness in your eyes, as if you had a weight on you that would never be lifted, as if life was already so difficult for you, and you putting the damage on like a gunny sack filled with sand around your ankle, but with a yellow smiley face on it, wearing a clown's cloak for easy cover. Easy depends on who's defining it. I sense nothing came easily to you, and yet you moved through life with such ease, such smiles and jokes. It's like how my kids ask why I laugh when I say something awful, like, I hope I don't die, because sometimes laughing about the scary stuff gives you some measure of control, even if that control is an illusion. Your bright colors and frantic scribbles and daring antics and jazz, as Kat called it, covering deep pain. I didn't see that then, but I see it now. at your father's house. It's Sunday evening at 7, and I can almost hear you whisper, "You must have balls of steel," as I walk up to the porch. I think, what's the worst he can say? No? Get the hell out of here? In my back pocket, I carry the defense. Your son is worth remembering. His life is worth remembering. I understand you weren't the cream in each other's coffee. And somehow seeing this place, this tan, suburban, fenced-in house with a basketball hoop without a net still gracing the garage, and a water tower hovering in the backyard, I wonder if you felt similarly fenced, shoved into suits for Sunday revival, you a neon green in a world of tan houses. At the co-op, I walked into the co-op on the avenue in Moline, a place where, if you never worked there, you should have. A man behind the counter there reminded me of you, or at least who you would be now if you were still alive. He was stocky and bearded and full of life, and looked at me with awe or pot smoke, or both, in his eyes, smiled and said, I knew today was going to be a great day, as if it was a good day for him just because I, a redhead buying the beekeeper who looked slightly like Tori Amos, graced his store, an honor for me to pay him a visit, as if it were a natural joy to have me around. I told him he reminded me of someone I once knew, and he said, yeah, fat Jesus, I get that a lot. It was just like something you would have said. And you chose your name as Jesus in our Spanish class, but his name wasn't yours and never will be, and he was from Bettendorf. If I could build a bright, burning bridge to you, I would. I would race across it and turn back, bring you back with me, back to those you loved, back to those who loved you. More, I think, than you ever realized, more than I ever realized. You were more than I ever realized. When you're dead, everything becomes a relic. When you're dead, everything of yours becomes a relic. The papers in your wallet, your photos, your phone, your black fossil wallet itself. It's all evidence. It's all treasures, still rich with the scent of you and your life, a patchouli leather paper fest. Even all the little tchotchkes, the odds and ends, all seem to say something. They speak to your life, what you valued, what you held on to, what you kept hidden in a Shiva lunchbox, the marbles, tiny bits of glass, the giant guitar pick, the 2 1980s baseball cards, the All About Me writing from English 101 at Blackhawk circa 2008, your last year on Earth. Old wounds on worn paper, black ink on cloudy pages, a blues number, and a pained cry to yourself that women are evil and can never be trusted. The ads you saved, seeing something valuable or interesting or enjoyed. The haunted and angst-filled journals, frightening faces, demons, clowns. What you saved and didn't save. What you wrote, what you couldn't write. What still exists, what there is proof of, what remains. What I can hold in my hands after the rest of you is gone. It's a giant collage pointing to the mystery of you, the mystery of life, of understanding, scribbles and glimpses, torn pages, documenting, relaying, showing, shining. I wonder if somehow you thought these things would ever be kept, would ever be discovered, would ever be read by anyone. I've debated about that. If someone published all my old journals and thought they represented me, they'd be a glimpse, a view, an indicator of how I felt, what I thought at the time, but not a final word, not a gospel. And yet the relics, the objects, the papers, the journals, the pictures, they are all I have to convey anything about who you were, what you believed, what affected you. So these things I must use. I must present what's been presented to me and hope it sheds light on the facets of who you were in your season of wilderness, your complex rebellion, both bold and shy, polishing your lost brilliancy as a wild diamond. Wishful vigil. I send you love, knowing that my love is not enough. I send you love, wishing that mine could somehow hold you, comfort you, strengthen you, sustain you, but you no longer have need of such things. You, part of the greatest love, a continual ocean of blessings, perpetual light, no longer needing the offering jars of fellow travelers, earthbound hippies, migrant souls. But I still want you to have this glowing vigil, this sea of candles, this adoration of masses. I want you to see the lights in all the tiny glass jars, the candles, both traditional and electric, the tapers, the tea lights, all of them lit for you, all of them pieces of you, honoring your memory, showing your impact, proving your life meant something, means something, is something, still significant, that you are more than ashes. How is it possible to love someone you didn't love when they were alive? I didn't love you when you were alive. I didn't love you when you were alive. I didn't love you as I could have, as I should have. I didn't love you when you were alive. These words, too great a truth, sharp and harsh, grinding, ground. You're not even in the ground. Your remains rest in ashes, in an urn, in a tan marble cell with a thin ledge, enough for a few pebbles or crystals or flowers, maybe a miniature figurine. But you're not there either. Are you in the air or the ether? Are you next to me? Inside me? In my head? In my heart? In my soul? I didn't love you when you were alive, and part of me wonders if I must now, if I must love you as penitence, as penance, if I must miss you the rest of my life as repentance, if I must wonder about you and chase you, always chasing, always wanting, always craving closeness, and find you out and find you, find who you were and what you would say and hear what you think and know for sure everything I can never know. You said I never hurt you, but I wonder if that's true, if that isn't you trying to spare my feelings. I didn't see you as you saw me, when you saw me. I wasn't in the same space at the same time, but we were in the same place at the same time, briefly, 4 years in a snap. I send you joy not knowing where joy found you in life, or when, or even if it found you. But I am glad, I am joyous for having found you. Even in death, I'm glad I still found you eventually. I send you peace, but you probably have all the peace you want wherever you are, like a cloak around your shoulders, like a shimmering aura of periwinkle, something you once demonstrated in a dream, tossing peace around as if it were nothing, as if it were easy, as if peace were a parlor trick. You, the one who signed your name with a smiley-faced heart that had devil horns and a halo. They shut you up in prose, a survival guide. They shut you up in prose because poetry would be too romantic, too beautiful, and music, the wrong kinds of music, are the tools of the devil. Be careful what you listen to. They shut you up in prose because your heart is a bird that needs its wings clipped, because love is control and ownership and mine, and they cannot accept your freedom. The meek shall inherit loads of guilt and crouch, too tamped down to share their gifts. So stay quiet, and all will be well. They shut you up in prose because you chose this life, this house, this wife, and nothing else will do. Love is possession and bitterness and checking up, because no man can be trusted, and no woman either. Because friendship is wrong and always will be. Keep to thyself always. They shut you up in prose because truth is too painful. They don't want to hear your truth, and they cannot accept it. You owe everyone too much. Your undeserved loyalty, your unearned approval, your unending silence. All of these and more, always more. Don't you know that by now? They shut you up in prose because I am a heathen, a heretic, the daughter of free thought and free thinkers. I always have been. I am not ashamed. I will own it. Beware the peacemakers who yield to universal truth, for goodness and kindness, mercy and forgiveness are weaknesses and shall not be tolerated. Embrace the thou shalt nots, for they are the rulers of the universe. They shut you up in prose because you are racing to the edge of the ship, crying out in pain, unable to do this anymore. And I am running after you, offering my hand to pull you back, offering you my heart so you know it's real, offering my words because they are all I have left. You jump, I jump, remember? I can't turn away without knowing you'll be all right. If you love someone, you tell them, even if it burns your life to the ground. Then you go from there. Blessed are those who can remember the lines from their favorite movies and music. Blessed are they who know who their real friends are. Blessed are the patient and the merciful. I've left these clues for you in what I've said and shared. Music, poetry, writing, ideas, fruits of the spirit, tools for survival. These will always be yours to unlock and delve into whenever you wish, as your mind is yours. In the words of Tom Waits, you can't get arrested for what you're thinking. Keep thinking, keep dreaming, keep believing. I just need to tell you the last place she lived was Shamrock Apartments, so maybe now it all makes sense. I'll write it all down for you. There are places that are yours and mine that they can never touch. The song I never shared. There was one song I never shared with you, the haunting piano ballad, the one where I confessed my true feelings, amber running, pouring all over the place, dripping thick, capturing living, hardening life. I had found love where it wasn't supposed to be, right in front of me, and asked for some source to talk some sense to me. I would have asked you, but I didn't think you capable of producing any sense at the time. I wasn't either. Sense fully off the table. You the focal point. Me giving meals for scraps. If you talk enough sense, then you'll lose your mind. God will never bring you another woman's husband. The center kernel clear and bitter, unable to be softened or sweetened. Trapped in a life you weren't living, smile behind sunglasses, water in beer bottles, vodka in water bottles, hiding in plain sight. Car rides at random, secret duets, songs apparent, texting abundant, late night longing, craving appreciation, needing validation, every notification electric, hungry for connection, wanting passion. I thought of sharing it with you at the end, when it didn't matter. A last electronic letter, a final link, a musical message flung across the skies of election, hands held in the air, its deep reverberated voices like a morning celestial choir. A sticky note clung to your windshield. Ho'oponopono. I am sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. A crumpled paper thrown through your car window as you drove away. Just so you know, I felt this. You did too. We were in love in the same summer. We just couldn't say it. It didn't matter if it wasn't where it was supposed to be. It still was.
Jane, I'm so misty here, Jane.
Oh gosh.
Oh my God. But gorgeous, powerful, heartbreaking poems.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh my God, Jane, you got me. Wait, are these all in your chat book? Are they forthcoming? Are they in a manuscript that we can get our hands on?
Okay, so the first handful that I read are from this poetry chat book, and people are welcome to message me if you're interested. I can get you a copy. I used to have them for sale on Amazon, but it's kind of tricky with Amazon sometimes.
Yeah.
So I do have that. The others are, especially the Love Affair with the Dead Man thing is still in process. So some of those are, ones that are, hopefully going to be in something at some point. And so, yeah, that's my, I'm sort of, again, as I'm in the MFA program, I have a lot of poetry, but I've never been really great about like sending it out and trying to get it out in the world. And I'd like to do more of that. So I really appreciate how much you love it and just your enthusiasm for it. So thank you so much.
1,000,000,000%. I mean, oh my God, such relatable levels of just of love and longing and heartache, just so gorgeous and so like I was in back here like, like I'm not crying, you're crying. It's gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so
get it
much.
out there. There are going to be, for everyone out there, there's a lot of people who are going to be feeling like me. It's gorgeous work. Jane, I would love to, hold all of those in my hands.
Well, thank you. Gosh, I would love to have all of them in your hands at some point. And I also have intended to make this the poetry chapbook, which is from a while ago, into like an ebook too. And again, I don't think that's hard. I would like to do that and get that out there. And again, make it available, on the cheap so that people can easily pick it up and all that. So
that's
yeah,
awesome.
I'd like to do that too.
Yes, just incredible work, Jane. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad that you loved it, and I just so appreciate this opportunity. It's such a great one, and I'm glad that I had enough to read. I had more stuff to read if needed, but I was just like, oh goodness, 25 minutes. I know I've got stuff, but I don't know if I have like.
Oh yeah.
enough,
oh my goodness, yeah, and it was rich. It was. I'm looking forward to the Q&A because there's so many, technical questions, second person direct address, and all these things in a memoir in verse idea and wow, so much, and also the connection to writing about agricultural equipment. I'm still fascinated by this whole thing.
I still need to write that poem, Chris. I'm sorry, I have not completed that assignment.
That's right. You were supposed to. I don't think how do you go about writing? Go from writing about I don't know what you were writing about, like
new product releases mainly.
Those huge things on farms, and then you go and write these amazing poems here. But anyway, we'll talk about
that's
that
so
later.
kind, and thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be part of this group, and I think it's such a wonderful thing that you've put together, Katie and Chris.
Thank you.
I'm so proud and glad to be part of it.
Oh, absolutely. And it's our pleasure. It's always wonderful. We love all of our guests, and it's always so special to have a FUMFA person here with us. So thank you so much, Jane, and we'll see you in the Q&A.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right. Wow, Chris, starting the evening off with some tissues. Just powerful.
That's right. Get out the hankies.
Well, it's a good thing I put a lot of makeup fixative on. You would just never, ever know. So much,
too.
Chris.
Me too. I just spraying it on, lathering it on.
Chris, that's too funny. That's too funny. Oh my God. Well, just a beautiful reading from Jane. But we have a second guest this evening. We are not done. We're just halfway through. We've got another incredible guest. We're super excited to welcome David Radavich. Welcome back, David.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is great.
Yes. Thank you so much. We so enjoyed your reading a few weeks back at our New Year open mic, and so did our audience. So it's a delight to have you. How has your weekend been?
It's wonderful. The weather here has just been gorgeous.
Nice.
Cold winter days with lots of sun, and the trees are beautiful.
Great. Fantastic. That is just wonderful. We've been having a pretty lovely kind of warm winter here too. I would love to see a few more snowflakes, but not problematic snowflakes, just beautiful ones.
Friendly snowflakes.
Friendly snowflakes. Chris, would you do the honor of reading David's bio for us?
It's my pleasure entirely. David Radavich is a socially committed poet, playwright, and essayist. Among his poetry volumes are Slain Species from 1980, By the Way, Poems Over the Years, that's 1998, and Greatest Hits, 2000. Individual works have appeared widely in journals and anthologies. America Bound, an epic for our time, that's from 2007 from Plainview Press, narrates U.S. history from World War II to the present through the eyes of everyday Americans, while Canonicals, published in 2009 from Finishing Line, investigates hours. That's right. Middle East Metzet from Plainview in 2011 focuses on a troubled, enchanting part of our world, the countries we live in. From 2014 explores our inner and outer geographies. Magic Again, selected poems on Thomas Wolfe, co-edited with David Strange, appeared in 2016. His second narrative volume, America Abroad, an epic of discovery, also from Plainview in 2019, is a lively, broad-hearted companion volume to America Bound. David's latest book is, I'm going to try to do this right, Unter der Sonne, Under the Sun. That's his a dual language volume, showcasing his German poems. I don't know if we're going to hear any of those.
So cool.
Tonight. That might be interesting. Take it away, David.
Okay, thank you. I thought since we're in the depths of winter, I would start with a winter poem. And when I was in junior high and high school, I lived in Idaho Falls, Idaho, which is near the Tetons. And it's very cold there. And so people have a zillion winter games that they get involved in. And one of those, on one outing, I went ice fishing with older men. I was 14 or 15 at the time. And I went ice fishing. And I have to say, I wasn't overwhelmed by it at that time. But I wrote this poem a few years ago. And during the passage of time, I have a little bit more tolerant view of it. Ice fishing. I didn't realize how hard it would be to cut even this modest hole in the January ice. So much work for a chance of success. Yet here we are, hoping. And then to think, what if one of us fell in by accident? How in all this lake would he find his way back to the small saving hole? How do we expect our fish to know that? By trickery, of course. A long line, seduction and pulling. Cruel if you ask me, but you didn't, so I won't answer. Just cogitating as we sit here in puffy parkas and talk about nothing men know so much about. A few lucky strikes we can claim with a tail. Late morning seems the right time to go and fry up for lunch, warm the innards, claim the silvery day, a male reward worth remembering. As Chris mentioned, one of my books is called The Countries We Live In. And the premise is that we occupy a number of countries. I don't just mean the United States or foreign countries, but the countries of war, of love, of illness, of sacrifice. And these landscapes are different. And one of the countries that I live in is cancer. I had cancer when I was around 32 and was stage 4, very nearly died, but in a kind of miracle, I'm still here, and I'm happy to be here tonight. And I've written a number of poems about cancer, but I will read this one called Lazarus. And I think most of you know the story of Lazarus from the Bible. So that's the basis of this poem. Lazarus. First he was alive, and then dead, and then alive again, walking out of those corporeal bonds, as if a butterfly had been summoned from its chrysalis by the teacher, exemplifying what can be done with divinity. Nothing short of a miracle made memorable in a text chosen by counselors who needed a warm witness. And here I am, of chemotherapy the gift, walking out of myself, hairless, yet clothed and reconfigured as a fugitive specimen, blood new and scars swathed into the night, my own witness in a time of doubting. Miracle enough, how life walks forward as a teacher, hand over hand, out beyond crowds. Another book that Chris mentioned is America Bound. I don't know if you can see that. An epic for our time. And this is a work that describes American history and culture from just after World War II to the war in Iraq. So that 50-year period roughly. And it's told by everyday Americans who live in a town called Troy along the Mississippi River. And there really is such a place, but it's mythical in this case. And the characters who speak are a full mix of black and white, men and women, old, young, gay, straight. I tried to get a whole range of voices in different walks of life. The monologue I'm going to read is by Sterling. Sterling is a black man in his late 20s or early 30s. His father, Thaddeus, was served in World War II in Europe and came back to the kind of racism that was rampant at the time. And Sterling got involved in the civil rights activities, and he ended up going to Vietnam. And there he was in a unit with a friend named Joe, a white friend, and their unit was hit by mortar. Sterling went blind and Joe lost his leg. So this is Sterling's story. It all seems so ironic now. In college, I was totally out there, and I do mean out there. Any demonstration within 100 miles, I was there, carrying a sign, screaming, Black Power, all that jazz. It felt good. It felt real good. And I believed. Whitey, the system, they were about to go the way of the dinosaur. My daddy said, why don't you prepare for a real job? Law, medicine, even accounting. I didn't survive the good war for no sociology shit. Black studies he always spat out with open scorn. But that's where it was. The action, the freedom, the energy. And it was a good place to be in those days. Nothing at all wrong with majoring in sociology. only no jobs. Reality hit the big fan. So I signed up, innocent as the proverbial babe. I couldn't have been thinking, ticket to what? As it turned out, the jungles of Vietnam. Lord, I thought Alabama was hot. Felt at first like the oven of Satan himself. Only humid, with the air clawing over you with tongs. But the setting wasn't so bad overall. Sweating, crawling around, pretending to be accomplishing something, till boom, that shell hit and everything went black. Black as night. And I'm not talking African skin black, which is mostly brown anyway, at least in my case. I'm talking black as everlasting absence of any light, sun, or moon. Blind as Oedipus in, where was it? Thebes? Joe was beside me with his leg blown off, laughing like a maniac. I'll never play baseball again. I'll never play baseball again. Almost like he was glad to be rid of the American pastime. But I looked out and saw nothing more than the end of my favorite life. The life I had been so busy acting in. No more civil rights, no more upping the system, just feeling my life ooze out like the soul, lost soul I always was. Prisoner of the old South, not yet crawling to the new. As the man said, sockets dripping in tainted blood, I was blind, but now I see. I see in myself a fool of the first order who believed we could really change the system, make it help the poor, the damaged, the folks with the dark skin who suffered so much and will never get their justice without some serious blood. Man, was I a babe, innocent and so blind. And now I stare at the world. I look at everybody through the heart of myself and see it clear as a shell, break open like a flower. I'd like to, you can tell there that I'm interested in social issues. I want to read a poem now. I want to fast forward to the summer of 2022 when we had this shooting in Uvalde, Texas. This poem is called Perfect Portrait. Sometimes metaphors are too perfect for words. Police in riot gear standing in a school hallway in Uvalde, Texas, doing nothing for 77 minutes, strolling, phoning, reaching for hand sanitizer, while inside the classroom, the crazed gunman mows down one child after another, two teachers, air burning with smoke and blood and screams only ending when death explodes or oozes out. This is America in 2022, immobilized, imprisoned in a trap of power, lost in the hallways of moral evasion. We can't address racial justice or climate change, enforced poverty, or violent inhumanity. We are the cops standing around, checking our phones, doing nothing to save our children, to guarantee our future. Look in this frame and see what we've become. As Chris mentioned, my most recent poem is a book of my German poems with English translations. And I do write poems in German, and which is kind of strange. I lived in Germany for a couple years and taught there. But I don't write a lot of German poems, but I do write them occasionally. I wrote one this morning, oddly enough. But I would never write a poem in German that I can't write in English. But there are certain things you can do in other languages that you can't do in English. So I thought I would read one. I'm going to read the English translation first, so you can get the meaning of it. And then I want you to hear the sound of the German, because the sound is what I'm going for. This poem is called Walpurgis Nacht, And Walpurgisnacht is an ancient Germanic tradition that falls on May the 1st. And it's they have lots of bonfires. And the purpose is similar to Halloween. The purpose is to chase away witches and demons and satanic figures. So this is the English translation, Walpurgisnacht. Not all demons arrive unbeknownst. Some are politicians and bankers who impoverish the people. Many are lovers who linger like lead. Others still bear their own special hate. Tonight, they all arrive home. Who knew they could fly so fast under the bridge? Swallows returning to nest. The mud clings hard and fast. Here they come with their sharp eyes and dark wings. And here is the German, Walpurgisnacht. Nicht alle Dämonen kommen unerkannt. Einige sind Politiker oder Geschäftsmänner, die das Publikum verarmen. Viele sind Liebhaber, die wie Blei verweilen. Noch andere treiben ihren besonderen Hass. Heute Nacht sind sie alle zu Hause. Wer wusste, dass sie so schnell unter die Brücke fliegen könnten? Schwalben zum Nest zurückkommend. Der Schlamm klammert sich hart an. Jetzt mit scharfen Augen und dunklen Flügeln treffen sie ein. And I don't know if you could hear that. In English, the translation is the mud clings hard and fast, but in German it's der Schlamm klammert sich hart an. You can just hear the sliminess of it. And the very last line, the sharp eyes and dark wings, treffen sie ein. They come into you, which I find kind of scary in the German. So let me do something totally different now. Another poem that's in my landscapes book, The Countries We Live In. One of the countries we live in is love and heartbreak and relationships. And that I've been married to my wife for almost 40 years now. And that kind of longevity with one person is its own landscape, its own geography. This is a sonnet, a love sonnet, between ourselves. This creaking boat rocks unevenly from open sea again to gathering shore, moves us strangely heartward over time, a hungry bird still pecking out its meals. I'm no swimmer in this flash of water, yet the twisted oarlocks hold us steadfast in these bodies, in these sacred barriers we call ourselves, that ache in moving, leaving all behind. This pilot twosome that has chosen us drifts somewhere wave-like and complete. The palm trees at our left and right bend, then hollow like days assorting under the sun. Passengers who look so much like us, alight, and stand uneasily among the scents of night. When I'm doing readings for general audiences, I don't really like to read poems about poetry, but I think we have lots of folks tonight that are poets or who like poetry, so I want to read a poem about poetry. This is called What's Cooking? Nothing tastes better than poetry. Slow cooked in its juices, rhymed with flavors like my mother used to make with her mottled hands and mind firm as risen dough, baked that long in the oven. Nothing matches those flavors, that spicing, sitting by the cozy hearth or in front of a raging fire, frozen in fear yet awestruck, the best visual meal you have ever had this side of heaven. There's no recipe that can be passed down, no verb adequate to the hunger every time you crack open the book that carves your insides with a cleaver and pulls out delicacies you never knew you had to share with others. Yum. Such delicious language you will not forget. Your eyes open like full plates. Your mouth waters for another serving of the holy, sizzling word. And I'll go back to a couple contemporary issues. One of the traumas for me of this past year has been the war in Ukraine. And it's touched me deeply. My grandparents emigrated from what is now Belarus in 1920. And at that time it was part of Russia. And so I care about people suffering throughout the world, the Rohingya people and the Uyghur people and people in East Africa and Peru and Yemen and many places. But this has felt like a direct attack on me. So I've written a number of poems about it. This particular poem, you may have heard that in the eastern part of the Donbass region, the Russians are forcing the Ukrainians to become Russian and depriving them of their identities. This poem is called Turning Russian. First, they take our passports, then our cell phones, copying our contacts for their net of negation. Then they make us strip and take all our clothes. We get new money, not much, to spend on what they want. We can no longer speak like jailed birds. We will pass into history as a sieve, as smoke. What will I still remember? What will I know to sing? We are cogs in their machine that pounds everything into the same grim paste. I lie down in a bed not my own. My face becomes foreign, my body a ghost of the moon. Another event that, or I guess another kind of trauma that we've been dealing with for the last several years is, of course, the coronavirus. And many of us have written about what we've been through, and we've been through many different aspects of it. I thought tonight I would read a poem that's a prayer, Corona Prayer. Let the light that has been hidden by the cave of commerce shine out with radiance. Let the noise that has blared nonstop on television, in malls, in restless crowds, be still and listen. Let the air clean itself from empty factories and vacant streets, even to satellites and the universe beyond. Let distance bring us closer. Let us meet in far places. Let us greet one another in spirit and in truth. Even in the midst of death, let this earth, this island home, learn to love again, to know itself, to heal and create radical hymns, fresh art, deep human touch across a wide new web. And I will close with this lighter poem. I am pleased to be the grandfather of twin girls who are now 14. And I recommend grandparenting. It's absolutely fabulous. It's easier than parenting and lots of fun. And even if you don't have blood grandchildren, you can find some young people to nourish. So I hope you can do that. When my granddaughters were 3, 4, and 5, and maybe 6, they loved to climb on my shoulders and for me to run around the house. I'm 6'4", so they were really up there, very high. And we lived in a tri-level, so we had stairs, and I would run up the stairs and down the stairs and room to room. And they thought this was great, and they wore me out doing it. But it was great fun. And this poem is called Granddaughter's Right. She grabs my body as if it were her own, which of course it is. To seize, hug, poke, or ride on round the shoulders of the house. Upstairs, behind sofas, weaving like a fervent fish or galloping giraffe. High and holy, then ultimate collapse in giggles and not a few aches that can only mean life is plenty. Thank you all for listening.
David, more tears over here. You and Jane this evening with all these incredibly powerful,
Yes.
beautiful poems that resonate so beautifully.
Thank you so much. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you. My goodness, we traveled around the world. We traveled to these countries of being, of emotion, these states in our lives. And you spoke to such important issues, speaking up for the oppressed and vulnerable as well. Just incredibly powerful, vivid work, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Beautiful, really beautiful stuff. And there's just so much to talk about. So let's get to it.
Let's get to it in the Q&A.
Yes.
People, get your cues into the chat. We're going to bring back Jane, and we need to give one more round of applause to both of our features this evening, Jane VanVooren Rogers, David Radavich. Both of you were just absolutely incredible. And, you know, we love to observe these sort of serendipitous similarities that we end up discovering. And I feel like there was so much personally powerful narrative in both of your pieces. You know, you got me with the tissues over here. I'm trying, you know, my fixative is just.
We like that, don't we, Jane?
Well, we love to bring out emotion. I mean,
Yes.
poets
Perfect.
like to do
No,
that,
I mean,
and
Yeah, right.
I think that's such a, you know, such an advantage of poetry that prose simply doesn't have, is that I think it just cuts to the heart of those emotions, and whether you're writing it, reading it, hearing it.
It is so condensed. It's
right.
crystallized.
Right.
Yeah, that in a space of just a page, it can just wreck somebody, which is awesome, right? Like, that's awesome. I mean, it's, you know, it's an emotional moment, but it's beautiful. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Just incredible. Well, thank you so much for both of your incredible readings. That is just such a cool similarity that I can see between you. But we're really excited to get to ask our audience's questions. Get those in the chat, audience. And but we're going to get started with our famous first question. Chris Belden, take it away.
Sure. So yeah, we'll start with Jane, then go over to David. But very basic question: How has writing changed your life?
Ooh,
huge question.
Oh my. Well, so I wrote my first story when I was in second grade, and it was called The Genie at My Door. And the genie was granting me 3 wishes, and I don't remember the third one, but I remember I wished for a pretty dress for my mom and no more wars. And I don't remember what the third one was, but I actually dictated that story to my mom. You know, I was like in the bathtub and she was writing it down. I had like this assignment. And so it was just kind of a neat thing. But I think ever since then, it was like, I knew that there was something magical about writing, and I knew that I wanted to do it somehow. And so that only solidified for me when I got to high school and then decided to major in English in college. And I just feel like writing has taken me so many places that I wanted to go, whether it's to a building rooftop to see how something worked, or inside a process, inside, you know, departments, or inside, you know, people emotionally sharing things with you, you know, via interviews and things like that. So writing has opened so many doors, and it's something that I think have recommitted to through, you know, pursuing an MFA, you know, in writing, and really wanting to work more on my own work, and not just write about agricultural equipment or or other things. So
that is so awesome, Jane. And I love the way you said that. Like, it kind of gives you this, you know, marvelous excuse and like extra purpose. Like, you know, I want to find out about that. I need to for my poetry. And, you know, it kind of gives you permission to dig deep and take on that challenge of writing about it, of crystallizing it, and of sharing it. I really love that.
Yeah. Do you still write in the bathtub? Is this a thing?
Well, you know, something that I found really useful for me is more like the dictation piece. that I
okay.
did with my mom back when I was a kid. I'm now doing that on my phone.
Voice to text.
And just being able to talk through things and capture ideas has been really helpful for me. And I have found that I've written so many words that way just through talking through an idea. So that piece, yeah. And maybe in the bathtub, maybe if I'm on the phone dictating, in the bathtub, but
Who knows?
I think that's great. I think that's
Yeah.
a great way to stop yourself from doing the, I'm going to stop and edit this while I'm still in the flow, which can happen when you're writing. And I think if you're dictating and you're just kind of letting it flow a little bit more, there's far less chance of having that moment of like, I'm going to stop right here and I'm going to prevent this other good stuff from flowing and I'm going to bruise it already. I love that method. Very cool.
yeah, thank
There's
you.
that stuff too.
Well, and I had a like a life coach person tell me one time, she's like, "You're a verbal processor," and I was like, "I am." But you have to talk through ideas, and you're a talker, and sometimes you talking about something is really you figuring out what you think about something or telling yourself something that you need to know. And so anyway, I just thought that was an interesting thing, and so I think that's why me talking into my phone is helping with my writing.
That really clicked. That's great. That's awesome, Jane.
Thanks. It's working for me. Gotta find what works for you. That's for sure.
So yeah, David, how has writing changed your life, and when did it start? And
Well, I want to say, I don't know if you are familiar with the French composer Camille Saint-Saëns,
yes.
who's a wonderful 19th century composer, and he says, "I create music the way apple trees produce apples." And I think, and I love that phrase because I think, I feel like it's just a natural extension of
what you do.
being. I started really young writing skits and little playlists, which we performed, and we did this in high school, and then I took up poetry later, and I've written lots of plays. And I just feel like writing is my being, really, and the way that other people live through their music or through sports or something else. It just, it's not something you decide to do exactly. I mean, it does you.
you start to do it and you're like, yeah, this is who I am and this is going to keep happening and there we go.
Right. It's like the fickle finger of fate, right? It's just this finger comes down and points, and on my screen I'm pointing right at David. Okay, you are a poet, right?
Ta-da!
Like, yes, I am. Boom.
Yeah.
Well, I had an interesting experience this morning because I wrote another poem in German, and I keep swearing that I'm not going to do that. But I read an article about the Stasi secret police in East Germany, and then that triggered a memory when I was in East Germany and I interacted with the Stasi police. So of course, a poem came, and it came in German because I was living in Germany and speaking German, and so the poem came in German. So. And that wasn't planned. It just happened from this article I read.
It has to happen. It must happen. Like it comes to you and it needs to be written. And like you're the, you're the vessel for that expression. And I think that's such a gift to be able to write and crystallize those moments, those memories, those powerful feelings, and to also do so in a second language and capturing this cultural experience that was not necessarily, I'm in East Germany because I'm a poet doing poet things, but it was part of your life, and it lives now, in this incredible poem to be shared with people as kind of like this relic of that time. I think poetry is so awesome like that.
Well, and this is something I'd forgotten, an experience I forgot I had.
That's awesome.
So we can go back to something we experienced 20 or 30 years ago or more, and all of a sudden it lives again.
Yes.
Now, David, would you send that to say a German language literary magazine?
Yes. Yeah, I have. There's a German magazine called Translate 2, and I publish there regularly.
Nice. Awesome, David.
I do have an outlet, thank God.
That's perfect. That's
because I couldn't publish it in this. Well, it's published in this country, but it's in German language. That's a very limited market, as you can imagine.
Well, it's such a pleasure to get to hear it on, on a show like ours. And I don't mean to like toot our horn a little bit, but we like to give our features like that full 25 minutes where you get to share kind of like this breadth of work that you want to share at that moment, that's representing you at that moment. And, we kind of get the treat of having the time to hear it in English and in German and your stories about it. So that was such a treat.
Yeah, it's the first time we've had some German poetry on here. We've had had some Spanish and maybe
Hindi.
Hindi.
Yes, Hindi. Yes, we have.
Well, what I love about languages is each language has its own beauty and has strengths that you can't communicate in other languages.
That's right.
Absolutely.
Right, and and translation is so difficult for that reason, right? Because like, as you pointed out after you read that poem, and pointing out those phrases and how they sound in German versus English, it's a very different thing. I mean, it's lovely in English and it works, but it's not
as powerful.
Not the same.
That alliteration that just really works with that imagery. Though I can't repeat it. I don't speak German, but when you were describing it, I was like, yeah. That is
well. It was a poem that the Valpersona poem was a poem where I wanted to have really harsh, frightening sounds, and I did that. It's easier to do.
It has that reputation.
Yes,
it sure does. Oh my goodness, that is very cool. Very cool, David. All right, well, audience, you need to get your cues in the chat, but I have a question for the both of you. Kind of jumping back to our this narrative poetry that's going on, where Jane, you're kind of doing a bit of memoir in verse, as you had mentioned, Chris, and where you, David, were really sharing a lot of these stories that have a much very much a narrative style. How do you sit down, Jane, and say, okay, I need to write about this situation. This is where I'm going with it. It's going to be in kind of this memoir in verse form. I'm going to have it be lyrical, but also, really stick to this narrative so we get an idea of this person, this place, and this larger story. Is it something that you outline, or is it something that, that happens as poetry does?
Well, about this particular project with the love affair with a dead man, this is a book or a project or a work that I've been trying to figure out how to do for over a decade. So and I'm still working on it, still getting there. So I'm definitely not an outliner or a planner. I wish I were. I wish I was more of a structure person.
I don't necessarily wish that. It's working for you. What you're doing is working.
Well, but I think sometimes when you have an idea that is a good idea and that will resonate for people, but you're just not quite sure sometimes how to translate that for the page, or how to package this into something that people are gonna resonate with. I think that can be really, a challenge. So, but I think as far as, those particular, some of the poetry that I shared, some of the older poems that I had written for that, I was saying, at your father's house, at this place. So it was kind of like, or I would say, upon seeing this or that, or upon,
very
this or that happening. So that was kind of helpful to me to, again, look at it from more of like a scene, pick a scene, or, okay, so I'm trying to capture, what I was seeing and feeling, and, what was happening in this situation, or when I was at this place and I was thinking about this aspect of this person's life. So I think, but I think sometimes too, sometimes, as I think poets are blessed with, having those lines come to them kind of clairaudiently or whatever.
Right.
I know I've had that happen. And I always regret if I don't write them down, because then I do think it goes on to someone else, like,
someone
hey,
else,
God or the universe
Oh,
presents
right.
you with this idea, and if you don't take it and make it your own, then it's like, okay, it's just gonna
It's fine.
float away, and you
God.
can't remember it again. So I had just done that and put notes again, using my phone, but in the notes feature, I remember something came to me last night before bed, and I quickly just like,
Mhm.
and just texted it in. So anyway, I don't have a plan. I wish I did. I'm
No,
still figuring it
I
out,
I
but
think,
I
it
don't know
it
if
it
this is
can work
answering your
that way
question, but
with poetry. You kind of build up these pieces. I mean, at least this has happened for me, but, you have all these different episodes. You know that these all need to be in there. Maybe you have in your mind, like, I know that these other poems need to be written, they need to be born. And then when you're doing that manuscript review process, it takes its shape. And for me, it's like having the faith that it will, and it's going to sort of find that shape. I think either way can work beautifully. It just depends how you work and how that particular manuscript, or series or chapbook is going to work. But David, I gotta pass this question over to you, because it seems like you have put a level of planning into some of these books, especially ones that are focusing on narrating history, or maybe if you have a series about writing about your family and these different countries. Excited to hear.
Well, I would say, and first of all, I want to say that I've written a lot of plays, and if you're writing a full-length play, you have to plan.
Oh God,
And
yes.
you have to plan your characters, get to know your characters, and so on. But I never plan poems.
Hmm.
I think, and I think I want to get the words down, and then I'll figure it out later.
Yep.
Like you might be writing a poem, and later on you say, "Oh, this really was a love poem." And I didn't realize it when I was writing it, and that kind of thing. But I will say that when you put a book of poems together, then you do shape and you group poems on a theme, or you counterpoint different kinds of things. So, and the two epics I wrote, I did do planning, not so much in the individual poems, writing them, but in the architecture of the whole.
Right,
Um,
right.
so for instance, in the America Bound that I read Sterling from, I didn't plan his speech, but I did, I did figure out who the people were that needed to be talking.
Right.
Yes. Yes, you let the poem sort of speak for itself. You let it, kind of become what it is. You then look back at it, like you said, like, oh, this is a love poem. And I think that's such an important part of the process, because we were talking a little bit before about, you know, eh, not bruising it or stopping yourself before it's come out. Maybe setting out to write a certain kind of poem is like the best way to get yourself stuck sometimes,
Absolutely. I
right?
think you have to go with the flow and find out later what it becomes. As
Yes.
Jane, what you were saying.
Absolutely. And then you figure out the architecture of the collection of the book, and you shape it at that point. That is so cool. Very, very cool. We do have a
We
question
do. We
in
do
the
it. And
for Jane. Well, and we can give this question to
it
David.
definitely worked. Yeah, it definitely can go to both. Yeah.
Jane, what happens when you don't get to write?
well, I'm not quite sure how to take that question. What happens when you don't get to write? Well, sometimes writers are guilty of, if there's something you need to write, suddenly the house gets really clean. I know that I am someone who, or your sock drawer gets organized, or things like that, when there's something you have to write. But when I think there's something that you're really passionate about, especially, more from an artistic perspective, I think, letting yourself go and be able to explore that is really rewarding, for sure. So I do think, though, I think I've kind of stopped up my own personal writing for a long time in favor of the paid writing that I was doing, because I was
Fair
doing that
enough.
during the whole day. And then it's like, you don't really want to come home and, necessarily write poetry after you've been writing for other people all day long. So I'm trying to shift kind of this, hopefully, second half of my life toward writing more for me and the things that I want to explore, in more my personal writing. And not that I can't still, do writing or editing for, as a business. But anyway, so I'm not sure if that answers the question, but
It does.
Well, yeah, it is a funny question, because it's hard to tell what exactly that even means. But I think I was sort of interpreting it as like, okay, you have a family, and you're in the middle of all hell is breaking loose, and you want to write a poem, but you can't. You don't. You're not able to write. And does what do you do? Does your mind explode? Do you have a place? Do you have a place in your brain where it's like,
Bookmark
okay,
it.
compartmentalize? It's like, okay, that poem is there, and in 2 hours or 1 hour or 15 minutes, whatever, I'm going to
You
get
voice
to
to text something. This line.
Well, I was actually just writing something down yesterday, like a new poem was coming to me, and my 12-year-old daughter came up and she was like, "Hey, mom," blah, blah, and I was just like, "Hey, I'm writing right now." So I mean, I think sometimes you can and you need to set those limits with your family, and especially children, to kind of say, hey, like, I can do something with you in a little bit, but I'm doing this right now, or I'm in my bedroom right now doing this, and they knew, like, hey, I've got a poetry reading tonight, I can check in with you guys later. So
Right.
I think especially for, and again, we're all busy, and many people have families and all that, but I guess that's just something that I would advise, is try to, if you can do the get up early or stay up a little late or write on your lunch hour, or whatever works for you, but grabbing those bits and pieces, I think, of time where you are inspired and you're at the page or the computer or your phone and you're ready to write, like, grab it and get those ideas down while you can.
Right.
I was going to say I'm ruthless, and I'm
awesome.
ruthless, and I always have paper with me. And sometimes I'll be at the grocery store and I'm getting ready to go in, and a poem comes, and I'll just, I'll rip out a piece of paper and at least write down the the rudiments of it, and then I can deal with it later. And I mean, I've been at a funeral, and I make an excuse to go to the bathroom and write something down and then come back.
You make it happen, David.
Yeah. As long as the house is not on fire, or the kid is standing there with blood gushing out of his eyes or something. You got to do.
And even then, you're taking notes, right?
You're like, here, I'm holding the pen.
Eventually, that's
got a free hand. David, I love that. I think that is so important. For similar reasons, I always have like my phone and my notes app, but I like to keep some kind of little journal in my purse. I like to make sure that I am ready, when it strikes, because like if it's gone, as Jane, you were saying before, it's gone and you feel like, oh my God, somebody else is going to get that line. They're going to put it to a poem. It's left me. I totally get it. That's awesome, David. We suddenly got 2 awesome questions from Ron. Let's get this one in here. David, what is your favorite poem of the ones you are discussing tonight, and why do you feel that way? And we'll pass this question back to you, Jane.
Oh my goodness, they're all my children.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I've always been fond of the Sterling poem just because of the drama of it, so I'm fond of that one. But I like the spiritual poems. I don't know. I wouldn't want to choose.
I love that. That is fantastic. Jane, what about you? Do you have a favorite, or maybe like a favorite of the moment, one you're really feeling right now from the ones you read?
Well, I think the 2 most recent ones of the ones that I read were the When You're Dead, Everything Becomes a Relic, and Wishful Vigil. I had read those on the last, FUMFA show. So I think I'm sort of evolving those original poems that are, at this place, at that place, and kind of going a little deeper and trying to, say something that's bigger with those. So probably those.
Well,
fantastic.
I don't know if it was that show or some other show recently where a couple of the poets were saying how they were reading poems that were their favorites that they don't normally get to read because they're not from the most recent book or whatever,
That was Catherine Essinger, I believe.
Yes, it was Catherine.
Yes.
That's right. And somebody else did that too, though. And it was, and we never got around to talking about that. But I was like, well, what, I'm interested in that. Like, what makes that a favorite poem? And maybe there's no, real answer to that. It's just
it's a great question because one publisher published a chapbook collection of mine called Greatest Hits. And the premise was these had to be poems that people liked of mine. And
people,
and they, readers. And the thing is, sometimes I have favorite poems that no one but me likes. And
I get that. I know.
I just have a fondness for that particular poem, and nobody I know likes it that well. And so it's kind of crazy.
I know exactly what you mean. That should be a theme night, though. Shouldn't that be, Chris? We should do that. Like your favorite poem, like poet's favorite. Like
to hell with the
choice. Poet's choice.
Yeah, I think Catherine was saying that, at most of the readings that she gets invited to, there's a certain theme that they'd like her to keep to, or maybe it's the first time anyone's ever heard her. So she doesn't get to go really deep into certain things that she really enjoys sharing. And I think we can all relate to that. We all have a certain kind of like corner of special interests or poems, or maybe like a super really dark, really long poem that like, you're not going to end up reading that in your 5 minutes at an open mic or necessarily, but it's special to you. That's great. We can squeeze this question in here before our last question. Thank you so much, Ron. But this is for David from Bonnie. It says, is there a certain mood you find yourself in to be inspired to write? And we'll pass this to Jane too.
Not really. I find sometimes, I think the mood varies a lot. Sometimes I write out of outrage. Or anger, especially at the current events like the Uvalde, Texas. I mean, that came out of outrage. Ooh. But other times, but I was thinking that I think sometimes if I haven't written for a while, I almost feel like I'm pregnant, and and there's a poem coming, but it hasn't come yet. I don't know what pregnancy's like because I haven't been there, but it does feel like a poem is gestating.
Yeah, it needs to be born. It's making you uncomfortable. You're like, it must be out of.
And then you're surprised by what comes out.
That's great, David. I love it. What about you, Jane? A certain mood?
I think sometimes people have the perception of writers that, we all have to, have like a candle lit and a cup of tea and be snugly under a blanket or, all these sort of comforts. And again, I think that's great when that happens, and especially more on your personal writing. But I also think that, as David was saying, you can also just be in the grocery store and something suddenly just hits you, or, taking a walk somewhere and an idea strikes and you need to be ready, to capture that. So I think it's not necessarily about being inspired to write. It's more about being inspired to receive,
ready to capture,
to be open. Ready to capture, ready to, see what ideas come and what you can make of those.
Well, and I love weird kind of prompts. There was a journal the other day that wanted poems on the number 11. And I can't remember, and it just happened to be that in numerology, this is a number 11 year for me. So I wrote about the numerology of 11, and I never would have written that without the prompt.
That is so cool. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's. I mean, what's the difference, really, essentially, of between that prompt and the prompt of, a social event that happens. And you say, "Oh my God, I have to write about this," right? And it's somehow that seems more organic, but it's not really. I mean, it's just
That's true.
Well, it usually triggers something you already were thinking about, or at least in my case. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about the number 11, except I thought, the numerology. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. I really love that, David. That's great. Okay, we must get to our famous last double question because we're going to get it a little bit smidge into overtime here. Chris, hit him with the last question.
Do it. Okay, we'll start with Jane, go over to David. It's a two-parter. Number one, pearl of wisdom some bit of advice for writers out there who are watching. And part 2 is a book recommendation.
A what recommendation?
Ooh.
A book recommendation.
Oh goodness. Okay. Okay. So Pearl of Wisdom, I think would probably just be the follow-up on what I just said about sort of being ready at any time to write and being ready to receive and, you know, making it happen and making it happen however it works best for you, whether it's, you know, dictation, audio on your phone, typing in, you know, texting yourself a note, emailing yourself an idea to follow up on later, just being ready to, you know, receive and capture and explore. I think that's one of the best things, you know, that any writer can do. And as far as a book recommendation, that's really that's really so tricky because there's so many books out there. But one that I would say I would recommend for a lot of reasons is A Constellation of Ghosts, a speculative memoir with ravens by Lorraine Herring. I had Lorraine on my author talk show a while ago, and I, you know, read the book, and I think the speculative memoir is a really interesting genre because it starts to bring in, you know, dreams and memories and spiritual aspects to things that, again, it's very, I think, bringing in aspects of the feminine too that have been ignored, you know, whether it's intuition or dreams or, you know, things like that, and just widening that memoir lens a little bit to include, you know, some of those like sacred or spiritual or mystical elements. So that's definitely a book that I would recommend.
Awesome, Jane.
Great, perfect. David.
Well, the piece of advice I would give really is for poets to take time revising and shaping their poems. I find a lot of poets don't do that work, and you can make a poem come alive by shaping the lines the way it looks on the page, making sure the strong words come at the end of lines or in a good place. A lot of writers don't know how to use punctuation well. A dash can make or break a poem.
That's right.
If you use punctuation well, it really adds. I think of it as the kind of percussion section of the orchestra. I mean, you know, that having good punctuation can really enhance a poem, and a lot of poets don't spend the time to really polish like that. I can't think of the title of her book, but I am a real fan of Patricia Hooper. It's a poet named Patricia Hooper, and she's has a couple of terrific books. I love her work, and I recommend her.
Awesome. Excellent pearls. Thank you both so much for those and for those fabulous recommendations. And thank both of you once again for your incredible readings and for being our guests this evening, Jane VanVooren Rogers and David Radavich.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes, this was so much fun. And thank you so much to our wonderful audience. Both of you have to pop on to Facebook and YouTube. I think that's where most of our comments are, and just read all the love that you received during your readings and also during the Q&A. And we'll see you all back next week, Chris.
That's right. We got Midnight and Chance.
It's going to be
That's all
awesome.
I'm going to say.
Don't miss it. Don't miss it, peeps. All right. Thank you all once again, and have a great night.
Good night.